reconvening back into regular session, and let's do the roll first or pledge of allegiance first?
Roll.
Okay.
Okay, Meg? Here. Kelly?
Here.
Orstein?
Here.
Gaffney?
Here.
Silla? Here.
Thank you, Mary. Will you please join me in the pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item number 3, approval of the agenda. Does anyone have any changes? All right, Orstein moves. Gaffney second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Open time for public to raise items not on the agenda or future agendas. Do you have any members of the public who would like to speak? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to item number 5, standing committees report out. Finance Committee. Tom, would you like to tell us about the Finance Committee?
Okay, the Finance Committee met, Mary Sill and myself on Monday, and we reviewed agenda item C, except the interim financial statement, and we reviewed the resolution number 17, which is our budget, and which we had a previous meeting on. So we had 2 Finance Committee met twice on the budget. And a number of changes were made, and we think for the better. We reviewed agenda item 8, which is hiring a new CPA firm. Our other CPA firm worked for us, I think it was for 4 years. And this is a 3-year contract with a potential renewals for 2 years. And the firm is very experienced with sewer districts, so I think it's a good choice. We also reviewed agenda item 9, and it's our response to the Marin County Civil Grand Jury report, Marin's retirement health care benefits. And they made a mistake in all our information and said our unfunded retirement health care benefits have increased by a lot more than we actually can. And then we reviewed the monthly capital program report, which is a monthly item which we get on the status of capital projects. And finally, we took a look at the legal services report. So all of those things are the board looked at as well.
Okay, thank you. HR Committee?
And then Human Resources, ditto to number 9, what Tom just went over. We discussed the same issues that were in your report. So nothing different to report than what Tom just reported. And we went over the monthly expenditures by Human Resource, and they just keep on coming down. And so with 1 more month to go, we're 79% spent through 92% of the fiscal year. So this is a significant decrease over the past few years. Felicia has been doing a fabulous job in picking up a lot of that as part of her duties. The RGS used to cover. So it's not like we're phasing RGS out, but we're using them way more slowly.
I would only add that on the Rancher report on the benefits package, not only did they get the numbers wrong, so the amount was not 109% increase, but 54%, which is substantially different. They failed to mention it was $660,000 as opposed to, so for example, Marin Municipal Water District, which is $35 million. So it's really not a huge issue. And I think this board will possibly address some of that moving forward anyway. But yeah, I thought that was important to know.
Thank you. Central Marin Sanitation Agency?
Okay, I'll report on that. Michael and I attended, and Michael can add what he wants. We went over their proposed budget for the year. We paid 48% of the service charges that they receive. But they also do a lot of projects for other agencies, like they contract with Corte Madera to do certain things, and Novato. And so, surprisingly, our service charges are 43.2% of their revenues. So yeah, I think it's to our advantage that they're contracting and providing services on a regional basis. But we are 48% of their budget. They also commented on the LAFCO study, which we are doing as well, had pretty much the same comments that we had. We got a report from the general manager, and I think it was quite well done. CMSA does a strategic business plan, and they list what they're going to try to accomplish throughout the year. And then they went over every single one of them and gave the status. And it was, I think, really useful. We gave it to Greg. I think it'd be a good pattern for us to use. That's what I like about public agencies, when somebody has a good idea to steal it. And so let them work the wrinkles out of it. But I think it'd be a really good thing for us to use to show what happened during the year. And then we talked about the other grand jury report is, well, the health care benefits. We talked about that. CMSA's health care benefits went down. It was one of the few agencies, I don't know how many, theirs went down. But they made a major payment about 3 years ago, so that's why they went down. It's expensive. And then we did a discussion on the public pensions, and I think we had a response to that as well. And finally, Kathy Hartzell, who has been there, we're trying to figure out how long, but I think maybe since about 2010, is retiring, and so Larkspur will be appointing a new representative.
Dan Hillman. Hillman.
It's Dan Hillman.
I know, but actually there's a procedure that that's what we heard.
Yeah. I was going to say, Tom, was there any specific comment on LAFCO's recommendation number 4 that CMSA should reorganize its governing board structure?
That happened at the meeting before. I was at that.
Okay.
Yes. I'll point out that Dan and I chatted briefly about it during the meeting and after the meeting, and he's totally open to any suggestion, including Larkspur no longer being on the board. And he said, we as a town of Larkspur should look at that and be open to that. And the only person not was Mary Beth Bushy. So she seemed not so open to that, but we'll see. So, yeah.
Thank you. I recall that you said that last meeting.
Yeah.
You said that the first one here. Great. Anything else on CMSA, Michael? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the consent calendar.
Wait. Communication committee met, but I was the only person there, so is that still a meeting? I guess so. Or not?
Well, yeah, sort of 2 informal meetings, but I'd say
Yeah.
there's.
So the survey went out. I don't know what the numbers are. Got some constituents who called me about it. So the board did not have input on the questions. I just want to be really clear on that for transparency. And so they went out. They just went out on the agency and staff. Some people like call me and say, why isn't there a question about Larkspur planning property? And just write it. So I think it was, I wonder if they say 300 so far or more?
Respondents?
Yeah.
265.
265.
Yeah.
We sent out a postcard to alert people. I think that was about 8,000.
15,000. So every
15,000
customer
to do a
address.
postcard, so I was sorry, but I was a little bit dismayed that we just didn't do a mailer questionnaire. I'm wondering, I don't know. So, I don't know. Anyway, that's what happened.
Yeah, so the individual postcards went out as part of the, basically as part of the outreach on the survey, just to encourage people to respond. But yeah, the pros and cons of the hard copy versus online were, that was something we kind of tried to take into account.
That's all.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the consent calendar. Does anybody have anything they'd like to pull off the consent calendar to discuss?
I have one question on 6F.
Anybody else? Okay, Pam, will you ask?
On on the attachment A.
Where are we?
Attachment A.
Okay. A little louder, I can't hear.
Attachment A.
160.
I'll get my horn. Let's see. So what we're going to send is, I'm a little confused. What are we actually sending?
Just the, literally what you have, what is labeled attachment A in the staff report, along with the copy
Resolution?
of ordinance number 64, Jan.
Okay,
And the only reason for including ordinance 64 is because it's referred to in the response. And there's really only one sentence in there that's of note, and it's the one that already provides for the board's discretion in partially or completely waiving connection fees for low-income housing.
okay.
And that's why it's included in the response.
So do we have a definition of ADU other than this attachment A in the body of the information we're sending? If not, can we add that?
The definition of ADU.
Yeah,
Accessory dwelling unit.
yeah. Can we just put it somewhere?
Go back to the, just define it.
Oh, I see. Just one, okay.
That's all.
All right, anything else? All right, can I have a motion for the, to move the consent calendar?
I move that we approve the consent calendar.
Steve, do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Item number 7, consideration of approving resolution 17-1529 to adopt the budget for fiscal year 2017-18. Greg or Felicia?
Well, I'll do a very brief intro, and then Felicia and myself and other staff that contributed are available for questions. But yeah, the draft budget's been, was previously discussed with the full board at the May meeting. We've had 2 subsequent meetings with the Finance Committee to incorporate or discuss and make necessary changes for all the board feedback to the draft. That is done. The staff report highlights the major changes that were made to the draft budget in response to the board's review and feedback. And beyond that, I won't go into any detail. I'll hand it back to the board and be happy to answer any questions.
Question, comments?
We, it was discussed the other day in the Finance Committee, which I went as Joe Public, that in sale of assets, it should, instead of saying assessed value, be appraised value. And everywhere where it says assessed, which it does several times, we need to change that to appraised. So I'm sure that has happened.
Well, I think there were some real key changes from the draft budget to what we have now. And, you know, I think it might be useful to go over them. One, we reduced the proposed debt service by $10 million, which gives us a shot to get some state revolving fund loans, which take longer to get. So they're very less expensive. So we think that was a good idea. We added a 10-year CIP, 10-year CIP, it was a 5-year CIP, but also a capital financing, like a conceptual financing plan, which before we didn't have one, and it looked like, gee, we're just going to go straight into the hole. But so we showed how we would get, you know, a possible solution of how we would get out of the hole. I think it's quite an improvement. We're not approving that, but at least we're saying, hey, here's a conceptual way that we're in good shape, everybody. And we talked about some cost-saving efficiencies which were built in. It's a 5-year financial forecast and another CIP. So those are the main changes, and I thought they were quite a good improvement from the draft.
Craig, do we have any thoughts on using this budget to pay down our unfunded pension liability or our post-employment?
Well, I know, yeah, certainly to make a significant funding contribution is how I put it. And do you want to address that?
Yeah, sure, I'd be happy to. So the actuarial reports recommend an annual contribution of approximately $100,000. And we have met that annual contribution since the initial setup of the CERP fund, the OPEB trust that
It was 2015.
Was it in 2015? Yeah. So there's an initial contribution of $200,000 in 2015, and then a $100,000 contribution for fiscal year 16-17. In the proposed 17-18 fiscal year budget, there's $200,000 proposed for contribution towards the OPEB liabilities. At the discretion and direction of the board, we will be, discussing what the appropriate contribution to the fund should be. It could be the recommended 100,000, or it could be up to 200,000, or another amount as the board decides.
What do you think we can squeeze out? Because I'd like to make a substantial contribution and get that unfunded liability to be a funded liability.
I'd like the district's actuary to make a presentation to the board about what the unfunded liability numbers really mean and what the appropriate contribution might be.
But when would that happen?
Sometime within the next few months, I would propose.
Well, then we can't change the budget. Wouldn't it be, we're approving a budget tonight?
We would have to do an amendment to the budget if you wanted to increase. I think that's how you
Well, and certainly other board members should chime in, but generally speaking, the practice of the agency, so on this particular topic, so for example, as Felicia mentioned, we have a budgeted allocation for this year, which is
200,000.
200,000. What we've talked about is the benefit of, for example, if there's a board direction to fully fund the OPEB liability, so to speak, as you and I have talked a little bit about this. One of the things we want to be clear about is, okay, let's all define and have the same understanding of what fully fund the OPEB liability means. Because as you know, the terminology can be kind of difficult on this topic. So the idea, one aspect of that would be to have the actuarial person come in and explain what that means, what the financial contribution would be, what it would look like in the forward going years, and then the board could give us direction based on that, say, okay, staff, we've given that information, we would like to fully fund the liability, and we would all know exactly what that means. And if that meant, and I'm just completely making up a number here, but it's probably in the ballpark, if that meant, okay, instead of 200,000 in this fiscal year, put 400,000 into the trust, that would be the CalPERS administered trust, we would be able to take that direction, and I think given everything else we know about the budget, it would be perfectly appropriate to go ahead and make that payment. So we don't typically, I guess there's a quick side comment, but it is related to the budget. Typically when we have some changes like that during the mid-fiscal year, it hasn't been the practice of the agency to amend the budget. The board takes that into account, we provide direction, say, okay, we thought we were going to spend 500,000 on this, now we realize we're going to spend 750. It hasn't been the technical practice of the agency to amend the budget. We've made that change, it's obviously captured in the financials, and very transparent, but we don't go through mechanics in a sense yet. And so that's just for everyone's kind of clarification.
Tom.
Yeah.
Well, I have a question. We met what the actuarial person told us to fund.
Yes.
But it's increasing. So what is his recommendation? I mean, what is he recommending? What is he recommending?
In September of 2016, the actuarial report was based on the district's demographics as of July 1st, 2015. So we have to keep in mind that all of the sort of financial projections from that last actuary report was based on a point in time like July 1st, 2015.
But my question really is he recommending that we pay, that it doesn't go up? You know, is that what he's trying to do? Or is he saying, gee, it can increase and it's not a problem? Do you see what I'm trying to ask you?
Yeah.
Is-
I think you're gonna have to ask him.
I think that would be a good idea. I would hesitate to answer
Because
that.
I know that we've been paying a lot to it, and the number 300 and something to 400 something like that. And we've put in more than
No, it's
$100,000.
663, I think, isn't it? Right?
No, that was, oh yeah, it went from 400 to 600.
That's right.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
And we put in like, probably well over 100,000 a year for all 3 years, right? Didn't
We put in a total of about 300,000.
Over 3 years.
Over 2 years.
Over 2 years.
Yes, and so we had an opportunity to
So
put in
you
another.
would think that it wouldn't be going up. That's what I'm asking.
Well, yeah, it's a.
It's a moving target,
Yes,
right?
it is. Yes, it is.
That's
Health
what I was
insurance
gonna
rates
say.
keep going up and up and up, but one of the variables you're referring to is 2015, and it's the demographics of the staff,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so then that has changed dramatically, and so we'd want the actuary to come back and reconsider that.
Well, has it changed dramatically since 2015? I don't think so.
Sure, the
Yeah.
reorganization of the department has probably brought in a younger crowd.
I mean, the organization, but the number of employees and.
Their the average
Ages,
age
it's all about
has dropped
ages and-
dramatically. Look around this room.
If it's older, it should be higher, but maybe that's another question for
We
you.
There's
had
a number of
three
factors.
people resign, or
Yeah.
I
3
know.
people retired.
So I hear what you're saying. I think we should, we should have this discussion and keep the budget numbers that we have for now. This is my
We can
personal
amend
opinion.
it.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with that.
We can
I'm
amend
fine
it,
with that.
yeah.
I'm fine with
'Cause
that.
I feel like
I want to
there's-
have the actuary come, and this is something I want to bring up. I want us, Greg and I talked about it.
Yeah,
so
no,
now that we're
I
all
think
meeting, I want
staff
this
has
thing funded.
And we talked
Yeah,
about
we have
this
good
in
direction on
finance.
this, you guys. And let me be clear what I think that is. There's an interest in figuring out for this agency, what does it look like? What would it require for us to fully fund the OPEB liabilities? We'll get that information over the next couple of
Yep.
months, working with the expert. The district will have everything we need, the board will have everything it needs to make a
That's
decision.
good.
So, okay,
Okay,
very
good. I'm satisfied with that.
Anything else on?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions on the sale of assets. So you're bringing into the next 5-year rolling, I'm just curious why that was interjected on this budget.
Right, so I can try to answer that, and certainly Tom and Mary and Felicia and others add on here. When, as Tom mentioned at the beginning, Pam, in the first draft of the budget, we had our, what I think is our standard 5-year financial forecast. So this agency always includes a rolling forward-looking 5-year forecast. And in the first iteration of that, as Tom pointed out, we purposely didn't try to make the numbers work, so to speak. We said, oh, for example, rate revenue goes up to this point, and then it's flat because there's no approved rate increases. Ad valorem tax, it sits here at some fixed level. We only incorporated things that we thought were very reasonably foreseeable, like COLAs and so forth. But the main point is, we didn't try to go find and figure out what the basics of a feasible financial picture would look like. That wasn't the point. The point was to just put in the expenditures and say, this is how the numbers would unfold. And the point being, it's a 5-year forecast. We'll have time to address those gaps. But the feedback we got was, rather than do that, at least fill in the big points of what might be a feasible set of financial situations for the 5-year forecast. In other words, try at least, what would it take to sort of make the numbers reflect financial health? And that's what we did here in the updated draft. So, for example, to put it in context, we assumed that there are future rate adjustments. They're tied to the average rate of inflation, because as a business enterprise, if we're not at least recouping our major cost center inflationary trends, you're probably headed in the opposite direction in terms of financial feasibility or financial health. The large for landing asset came into this simply as, okay, if somewhere in the next 5 years this agency managed to, in some fashion, extract the value out of that parcel, that would be a one-time revenue inflow to the agency. So let's assume that that's part of the 5-year forecast. We think conservatively said, we're just going to take the 2010 appraised value and use that, even though you could make a case for it having changed certainly since then. But the main point is, the revenue from the Larkspur Landing assumed sale or some type of transaction is not meant to be about that per se. It's just one foreseeable element of the financial future of the district, just like inflation. What do you do with rates? What happens with the capital program? And we just try to sort of turn those dials to see what does it take to keep the agency solvent and in good financial health. And that's, so put it in that context is my point. It's not focused per se on what we may or may not do with the park.
So my other question is, when you say or other transaction equal to, what does that mean?
Well, so as the board, I mean, we haven't really had any significant discussions about this, but as you know, there's a range of ways that a public agency could try to extract the value from that, in a sense, excess asset. You could sell it, you could lease it, you could do some kind of a public-private partnership with it. And we're not trying to or assume what that is. So the or equivalent is just saying any mechanism that the agency entered into, again, to extract the financial value out of that parcel.
And that was included in their direct result of comments on the finance committee.
Right.
And I guess I would just point out that it doesn't have any real control over what this board might decide to do in the future.
No, and it's the reason we just put it out there several years is because it's really it's just a sort of a placeholder assumption. You know, clearly with conservative numbers, it's one way to put in a full picture of the financial health of the agency.
And as we discussed in the finance committee, I mean, the way Greg has described it is, you know, they didn't make assumptions about anything in the future, so it sort of looked like we were falling off a cliff.
Right.
And we know we're not going to fall off a cliff in terms of revenues. So, for example, a placeholder of a 3% increase in rates we put in, and the fact that we do have this asset that we're going to make some decision about, I think it was just like, well, let's put that in, you know, it's something we know, it's in our, you know, it's an asset of the district. That's assuming that we're going to liquidate it, and that is an assumption, but it was in response to our request, that it not look like the budget was going to fall off the cliff.
We all commented on the, I believe every board member commented on the draft budget, and that came in from several people, not just.
Oh, in writing, that's correct.
Yeah, but I don't,
Yeah.
I mean, it looks like an assumption that's already gonna happen. And
It would
we're
be-
not even talking about, we haven't even looked at the 5-year plan.
Right.
I mean, I don't care, but I think we have to be sensitive to the community.
Should be
To
ignored.
saying, okay,
Right.
we're gonna do this, and
Well, so if you did-
it's a sensitive,
Oh, absolutely.
But it's an asset, it's got to be listed. You
enchilada.
can't not,
no, I'm
it
not
is a big
saying it's
enchilada,
not
which
an asset, I'm not saying that.
is- Okay.
I'm saying that we should be just cautious, this is my own thing, you guys can take whatever you want, that how we're gonna present, we haven't done remediation, it could be $10 million by the time it's finished. You know, these things start and they open the ground, blah, blah, blah. So I just wondered why it got plopped there.
Yeah.
And why did it get brought up when we started to do the next 5-year plan? That's all. That's basically where I'm at. It feels like the decision's already been made. And there's been some other comments that have happened periodically here, and it's just one of that. So transitional equal could, like you said, could be anything else besides a sale, right? Okay.
If I could just, in the budget, we do talk about the possibility of having to issue some more revenue bonds in the future to finance some of the work we want to do. And so my thinking in just mentioning that there are, as part of that possibility of how much that bond might have to be, if we had an asset, and if something were to happen to that asset that could affect the amount of that bond, that would affect, cascade down and affect many, many other things in the budget, just as an if, like all of a sudden a lot of money were to come in from somewhere. Next year, when we have to talk about rate increases again, maybe the rate increases won't have to be so much based on the budgets of the draft budget. So it's just, it's again, in the interest of transparency to the public, letting them know that there are possibilities out there that exist, and we're just mentioning it here because things could happen.
Okay, and there's other things we could mention that could happen?
Like what? I guess let's do it.
I don't know. I mean, there's probably a lot of other things that could be mentioned that if might happen. So, I don't know. I just think it's, as they say, it's, you know, it's possibly pulling the trigger too soon, but it's fine. I don't care at this point. I don't want to get into a big argument about it.
Yeah, I don't think anybody on the board thinks that this was a policy decision that was being made by you.
Yeah, it kind of is a little, like it's standing out, like, huh? We're not even there yet, 2020. So, okay. We'll leave that. So now we're gonna do 25 million in bonds. That's the plan. How much money do we have in bonds right now total?
We have, so the remaining funds that are unspent from the 2014 bond issuance is about
11 million? 11
about
million?
11 million. Okay, and the projected spend out at currently to where those funds are used up is?
Do we mean the month?
Yes,
The projected
just
month,
approximately.
October, November.
Okay, so again, I'm trying to just answer your question. So yeah, the monies that are remaining from the prior bond issuance, approximately 11 million, and those are projected to be spent out between now and November of this calendar year. So that's sort of our gauge as to when the next increment of funding is needed, and that's what drives the time.
So the total amount of bond money that we have asked for is what? There's two other outstanding bonds currently, right?
There are. You guys want to address the
Trying to get a
totals?
full
It's right about
47.
$47 million. And that's from the 2013 bond issuance, which was about 17 and change. And then the 2014 bond issuance, which was about, in round numbers, $30 million. And again, just to put it in context, so the 5-year financial plan that we're sort of operating under originally envisioned about $60 million, not counting the 2013. It envisioned about, or anticipated about $60 million in long-term debt over the next 5 years. And that was starting in 2013-14 going forward. So if you take the 30 that we issued in 2014 and the proposed bond issuance of 25, we're very much within, if not below, the sort of expectation from the financial forecast. So anyway, that's just to put it in context.
Okay. Let's see. Then we talked about the liabilities. So, the total budget is 64 million, right? And you're going to spend every dime, right?
Things go really well.
Yeah, on my
I
fault.
understand your point, yeah.
What?
I think your point about the spending rate.
Yeah, and
the
I'm
capital.
sorry, I'm
Yeah.
kind of still kind of bugging you about this. We have 78 million now left over. And will that money be included in the 64 million? What we didn't spend this last year?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's the answer.
Essentially, it was
You anticipate it being spent by this
Yeah.
November?
As part of the new fiscal year, we'll be burning through that money, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And maybe one, I think the board has seen some of this information in the past, but it's a useful a useful gauge, I guess, for what the level of certainty is with the spending. You've heard all this. But basically, the way we're looking at this is our best indicator of the certainty of the spending is when the project finally gets to construction, because obviously all the ramp-up work is done. And secondly, that's when the big money usually gets spent, just from a practical perspective. And so that's where, again, we've been repeatedly later than we want to be, but I think all indications are this is the construction season where that balance changes. And then by the time we get through the July board meeting, there's somewhere in the neighborhood of I think 20, where's Catherine?
Yeah.
There you are. Catherine, somewhere around $25 million in construction value on the street, actively awarded and underway. Now, that doesn't mean you get $25 million of construction work done in the next 9 or 12 months, but it means that those projects are moving. And the expenditure rates, not that we're spending money for its own sake, but in terms of meeting goals of the capital program, that's this upcoming fiscal year is when we really expect that.
So on our 5-year budget plan, we're on track, or not?
We're actually approximately 1
I know
year
we're
behind.
behind.
Yeah, we're about 1 year behind, and that's, I think, largely attributable to, quite simply, the challenges in ramping up the capital program have been more than we anticipated. I mean, that's, I think, the short version of it. And Tom and other board members, I mean, in a sense, you know, to your credit, you know, people said, okay, look, we know how these big programs go. They typically go a little slower than you think they're going to go. And I think experience has kind of shown that same lesson was obviously applicable to us, to Ross Valley.
Okay, and so we have done a lot of the critical work, right? The high priority work. And
Right.
after this year, I asked Catherine, if you don't mind, can I quote you? I think you said 10 to 15% will be less?
Left risk reduction, depending where you start, in the high risk, 4% the highest risk and 8% of the moderate risk.
So then it's possible the next 5-year plan would go down.
Oh, it's
Bonds,
absolutely the
rates.
intent,
Okay.
Pam. It's not,
That's-
I mean, I
that's
would
my
say it's
biggest
more than
question
possible.
is-
No.
We're crossing off some of the worst that needed to be done right away, and I just wanted to focus on what's left.
As
Yeah.
long as
That's
we're-
a result also of the cease and desist. You know, these are things that
Yeah.
we didn't really, as a board, have much choice on.
Right,
And-
that I understand, but I want to make
Because
sure.
I like my freedom.
Yeah.
Well, one of the big changes in it, we don't have all of the qualitative data and work done to back it up yet, but when we look at the changes in that 5-year forecast from the initial discussion with the board and the finance committee, a big activity, you know, for staff was actually revisiting that whole question of, well, what are the outlines of the capital program once we get past, say, 2018-19? And that's where we really spent a tremendous amount of our time in between these past two board meetings, was digging into that and thinking about what it really looks like. And we got to the point where, and sort of details to be determined, with a fair degree of confidence that once you get out to you get through the next 2 fiscal cycles of construction activity and the projects that are done, maybe slightly into the next one, you're definitely in a transition point there where you now take the capital program and you refocus it more towards the I&I reduction and other needs. And the expenditure rate and the magnitude of the projects, from what we can see right now, it goes back down to a much more sustainable pace, which is what we, in a sense, expected in the long term all around. You guys remember Vivian Housen's earlier conversations with the board going back several years. What she used to emphasize was, you're going to go through this curve, right? You're going to go through this ramp-up curve to catch up. And then what you're trying to get to is this much more modest, sustainable level of investment. And that's what we think we're seeing. So Pam, that's the intent, and that's what the 5-year forecast reflects. And you'll see capital expenditure rates going down more into the $10 to $12 million per year range, I should say. And those become numbers that our recurring revenues can cover. So that's
And then you start to pay
sustainable.
off
Right, now you're
bonds.
still paying debt service on the bonds we've taken in already, but we know that. But you're at least getting within range of with regular rate revenue and timely, inflationary type adjustments, I can cover a capital program.
I mean, I'm hoping we're gonna get to pay as you go, like we were.
That's kind of, I think these are the outlines of it.
Well, pay as you go is fine, as long as you're working as you go. If nothing's getting repaired, pay as you go is gonna end up with cease and desist letters coming in.
Well, I don't know if Greg would have to answer that maybe, but we were pay as we go when I first was elected in 2009. And
And I think,
history after that, but
I think Doug's point though is you pay as you go is a way you're looking at a financing option after
right.
you figured out what the system needs,
Yeah.
and what your service levels are.
Yeah.
And I think we're able to bring those two together at this point,
Okay.
which is a good, I think that's notable.
Okay, thanks for that.
But much of that is in the hands of the Regional Water Quality Control Board.
Oh,
And
when is that, isn't that a year you told me? It'll
Uh,
be on.
2020. 2020.
yeah, the current cease and desist order runs through at least,
There's a couple of different periods.
well, okay.
One, I think, is the furthest out we can put.
Okay, so somewhere in the 2020-2021 range.
Okay,
And it's, the enforcement order is not crystal clear on it. In fact, it doesn't say what it is on purpose.
Right.
But, and not to get too far off course here, but in terms of the expectations for the asset management plan and the related expenditures, as they tie to the budget, in this new fiscal year, we would anticipate staff and the team, some type of team outreach to the regional board to revisit and update the whole topic of what the next several years of the Ross Valley Asset Management Plan look like. And is there a solid case to modify aspects of the cease and desist order that influence our capital program? And the example that I use is, I think the most clear one is the hard and fast number of doing 4 miles per year rolling average of gravity sewer work. We have every indication that by the time we get done with the 18-19 work, the value in continuing that approach we will not be getting value for the public's money. To just keep going after 4 miles per year of gravity sewer pipe. It may look good on paper because you're doing 1 or 2% of your system. We think that money would be far better spent on targeted I&I reduction, other activities. So that's the case we'll be making to the board later
climate
this year.
change.
Right. And then their support for that is what allows us to then modify the capital program in the future.
Well, the lowering of I&I, I mean, that's critical to our views on CNSA as well. I mean, the plant can't handle what it's getting, and regional water board is not going to allow mixing forward in the next decade or so. We're going to see that change. So either we're building ourselves a new plant, probably the large scale landing property.
It's come full circle.
This time I'll choose the paint. Or we're going to have to lower on it, so I think that we need to focus on that.
Okay.
Tom, are you done, Dan?
I am.
Okay. Tom, did you want to say something else on the budget?
Oh, I did. We started out with a preliminary budget of $35 million for a bond issue, and we lowered that to 25, and we're not even decided that yet. When we issue those bonds will be determined by when we're running out of money, and nothing else. So we are just going to issue willy-nilly. But with the thought that we're going to issue bonds probably within this fiscal year, I thought it was a very bad idea to have our budget just dropping into Neverland. We were showing a $43 million deficit in 5 years, and we needed to. We're going to go to the rating agencies with this budget, and they're going to be all over that. And so you might as well come to them with a conceptual financial plan that hasn't been approved by the board yet, but it's a reasonable explanation of what we're going to do. And I think we should look at our assets that potentially will be surplus. I think that's one of our resources. We look at nominal rate increases. We haven't approved those yet. Some state revolving fund loans. I thought that the conceptual financing plan had a lot of merit. It looked reasonable. It would be just the thing that we would have to bring to the rating agencies anyway, and they kind of wonder, well, why the heck did you do it in the first place?
And we have to also fix our census of people in our district.
Well, that's my next point.
Okay. Bring it on, Tom.
I went to the Department of Finance to do our finance. We're showing 41,000 people. The Department of Finance that the county gets says our population is about 46 million. So I want to change that to 46 million. It's on
Thousand.
page.
Thousand. Marin does not have
A
millions.
million, thousands.
We look really
I'm
good.
thinking of dollars. 46,000 people.
That'll make us look better.
Yeah, that makes it better because they calculate dollars per debt per capita. You might as well get the per capita part.
And is the, do rating agencies reconsider our rate spontaneously, or do we go to them to do that?
No, we're going to have to go to them
Okay.
when we sell debt. But they look at it continuously.
I forgot what it was for in the first place. And then the better rating we get, the better.
The lower the interest.
Yeah, the better rate we get, okay. Anyone in the public have any comment on this budget? All right, then I will bring it back to the board. Any last comments or questions on the budget?
No, I move to adopt Resolution 17-1529 to adopt the budget for fiscal year 2017-18.
Second. All right, I'll take a Kelly Meggs motion and second. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. That is a resolution, but it's unanimous, so it's easy to figure out how everyone voted. Agenda item number 8, consideration of approving an agreement with Siobhan and Associates to perform audit services. Greg?
Felicia? Ask Felicia to introduce
Yes.
this for the board.
Yes, thank you. So the board directed staff to issue an RFP at the March 2017 meeting. Staff did issue an RFP to financial audit firms for annual financial audit services for the district. We had previously, as I think board member Gaffney mentioned a few minutes ago, used Moss Levy for a number of years. It was timely to get on board a new auditor. We had 4 responses to the proposal. 2 of the respondents, we reviewed and actually ranked all 4 proposals for proposal completeness, qualifications, and experience. The top 2 respondents we interviewed in person and did some reference checks, and the staff is tonight recommending to enter into a professional service agreement with Siobhan Associates for 3 years for a total amount of $49,500, which represents an annual cost of the district of $1,600, Sheldon Siobhan, the principal of Siobhan Associates, is actually here in the audience this evening and available to answer questions if the board should choose. Other than that, staff's also available to answer questions. Questions, board members?
Where are the bids coming?
I'm sorry?
Siobhan and Associates are currently representing
CMSA.
Sausalito,
Correct.
and several others in Marin County. Yeah. So great deal of experience in this
Yes.
area.
Yes, good local experience. Doug?
Where were the others budget-wise? I mean, where are the bids?
Siobhan was actually the lowest cost. We had, like I said, 4 responses to the proposals. Mays and Associates, who was the next highest ranked proposer, came in at $65,000, well over $15,000 higher than Siobhan.
Did you have a rating process besides,
We did.
did they come out first in the rating process?
They and Mays came out at the top. Mays and Associates and Siobhan Associates both ranked in the 90th percentile of our ranking. And again, we interviewed each one of those firms in person and did reference checks for each one of those firms. But staff's recommending to go with Siobhan, partly because of their local experience, partly also because of their cost.
Any members of the public have questions on this item, comments? All right, then I'll bring it back to the board. Any other board questions? Okay, may I have a motion, please?
I'll move approval.
Gaffney,
I second.
Worsky? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you.
Okay, agenda item number 9, discussion and direction on the Marin County Civil Ranger Report, Marin's retirement health care benefits.
You want to-
Sure, yes.
Please introduce this one.
I'd be happy to. Yeah, that would be one each. One each, and then make sure Mary gets one. So the district, along with many other public agencies within Marin County, received a Marin County Civil Grand Jury report, Marin's retirement health care benefits, which we touched on a little bit earlier in the meeting tonight. So the grand jury asked for responses to 9 recommendations regarding the district's OPEB liabilities. And upon closer review of the report published by the grand jury, also touched on a little bit earlier this evening, we discovered that there was an error in the grand jury's report. It referenced the 2009 unfunded liability number and compared it to 2016, which resulted in a differential of 130% between what they said was 2012 and 2016. So we'd like to point that out to the grand jury. There's a cover letter that's been prepared and distributed to the board tonight for your review. This was recommended by the Finance Committee to prepare this cover letter in addition to the formal response, which is included in your packet as attachment A. We did receive some comments from the Finance Committee and the HR Committee to make some edits to this report, which has also been handed out to you this evening. One of the more significant changes was in recommendation number 2, which originally had been stated that it would be implemented. It was that was a staff error. In fact, that particular recommendation has been done by the board. Again, we had discussed a little bit this evening that the district has made an initial contribution to this trust fund, which is, I'm going to just mention that it's an irrevocable trust. So any money that goes in can only be used for pension after post-employment pension benefits. So that's one of the reasons why we want to be very careful about how much money we do put in there. We want to get that actually to tell us what's the appropriate amount rather than just throwing money right into it. So, so we have made this, we have created this trust fund. The district did a $200,000 initial investment and then also did its annual recommended contribution of approximately $100,000. It's actually $109,000. And change for fiscal year 16-17. So that item is actually done. We're in the packet staff report, it was originally stated to will be implemented, and in the response that you have in front of you now it says done.
What number is that one?
Recommendation number 2. Each agency's standard practice should be to consistently satisfy its formal written OPEB contribution policy. The district does have a reserve and fund balance policy that states the annual contribution will be consistent with the actuarial advisory recommendations. So we have in fact done that, and I think that you would find none then would not have been implemented and only a few would require further analysis. This is staff's proposed response to the grand jury, and we welcome feedback from all of the board members this evening before we prepare a final response. That concludes my report.
So substantively, they're pretty much the same. You just pull that paragraph out to be a cover letter.
Correct.
And as we discussed in the Finance Committee, we had responded to the findings, but that we were not legally required to respond to the findings.
Yes, and actually our council and general manager and I had a brief conversation about that earlier today, and I think we landed.
The law requires that you respond to findings and recommendations.
Mhm.
In this case, my feeling is that you're responding substantively to what applies to the district, and so some sort of complaint that you're not responding to the findings doesn't have much substance to it, because how are you supposed to respond to these findings? So again, not unlike the grand jury report that we talked about, the grand jury report about the ADUs. This is not a typical grand jury report that focuses on one agency. Rather, it discusses a big region-wide policy issue and then identifies a bunch of agencies. In that circumstance, you know, the law is really written about, you know, the more classic situation where one agency is being examined. So my feeling is this is perfectly appropriate.
Questions? Comments?
No, I like that, and I intended to be part of the financial meeting as a citizen, and agreed with the letter, cover letter. And the only other thing is it would be, I would like to see somewhere in the cover letter a discussion about the discussion we had earlier today, which is we've made contributions in 2015, fiscal 15, 16, and 16, 17, and we're anticipating making more contributions, and it may be a significant, somehow that sentence would be nice to be put in there, but.
Yeah, thanks for that comment. I did actually add one paragraph that's a little bit different from what the Finance Committee saw on Monday. So the last paragraph of the letter, I point out that the district has made $300,000 in contributions to date, which would actually mean, if you looked at the district's liability currently, the difference between 2012 and the contributions that we've made make the increase actually zero.
Yeah.
Yes.
Isn't it actually negative? I thought in 2012 it was 302, so
It
it's
would be
negative
negative.
2,766.
A 0% increase, I guess.
Yep.
But yeah, strictly speaking, it would be actually negative.
Yeah.
So I think your point is well taken that, you know, the district's, I think what you're saying is maybe a statement in there about the district intends to pay down its
Yep.
unfunded liability. Is that,
Well, that's a board, but isn't that a board policy decision?
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
We haven't done it. You're
Right.
Yeah.
I think this is fine for now. I mean, we're on the right track, definitely. I don't want to say that and then something weird happen. And so you're saying, I mean, that when you said the irrevocable trust, I was like, oh, right.
yes.
That if we put that money away,
It's gone.
yeah, it's not liquid, it's not available.
Right, and so if the return on that for some reason goes down, again, I probably don't understand this well enough to try to explain it to somebody else, but I think it's important to know that we do get, you know, the revenue stream that is associated with that. It's an investment.
Right.
And so there's a projected amount that that's going to be worth at some point in the future based on that investment, which is again projected, kind of like our discussion about the budget. You know, we think it's going to be worth X amount of value in the future, but if it's not, we're still liable for that difference. And we've effectively invested money into CalPERS.
Are they estimating 7?
They are.
5 again?
Yes.
Which is,
5% return.
which is kind of ridiculous.
Well, last year was 4.1.
So again, you know, great idea, I think, having the actuary come in and have
I agree with
this
that, and the actuary, but I'd also point out one thing. If we put a substantial amount, let's say 300,000 in, and the numbers go down, but this is a moving target. There's always going to be
Yes.
OPEB liability, so it's not throwing it into a box that's not going to be retrievable. It'll be used for OPEB.
Yes, please.
Well, we did make a change in our terms and conditions that the employees, the unrepresented employees will no longer receive that benefit.
Yep.
So that actually would factor in that the possible turnover could make it that.
Okay.
It is always increasing or always needed.
Okay.
So in Finance Committee, we had a discussion, and here's what I thought we contributed to this. I thought in 14-15, we contributed $200,000.
15-16.
Okay, 15-16, we contributed
Yes.
$200,000.
September 2015.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, 200,000. And then in 16, 17, we contributed 109,000.
100.
And then this year, we're going to contribute, we're budgeted for 200,000.
We're budgeted for 200,000.
Okay. So in the previous 2 years, we contributed 300,000.
Yes.
And our unfunded went up 200,000?
Well, because thank you for that question. I really appreciate that, because this is a really important. It didn't take into account our contributions, because the actuarial report was based at a point in time
Prior to 82.
prior to the
The first
contributions.
$200,000 contribution.
Yes,
Oh,
because.
So they're just, and,
Yeah.
so, you know, what,
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
that's a good
Thank you
point,
for that
but
question.
I don't think the letter makes that as clear in your face as it should. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, he's a finance guy. I think the letter could be stronger.
Okay.
I really do.
Well, why don't we say what we contributed? Because that's why I was asking the question, hey, here's what we contributed, this amount, this amount.
Yes.
Here's our
It's in
budget, this
the
amount.
last
And I think if you did that, what you'd say is the outstanding OPEB liability right now is $693.
Right.
We've already put in 200 on this date, we put in 100 this date. We're slated to do at least 200 this year, which means our OPEB liability is actually $193,000.
Well, maybe, something like that.
Something, well, in the ballpark, you know,
Yeah.
of $193,000.
Based on the September 2016.
Right, and so I think that's a stronger letter and more truthful, and also says to the public, you know, we're look at the ones that are 35 million, go check with them, you know?
Yeah. I agree, Doug, I think it's a great idea.
Can this letter be also sent with a cover letter to the independent journal?
It is, there's CC on the bottom of that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right, so we can edit this and
Yes.
make it.
I have a quick question,
Uh-huh.
if you're done. On R5, I think this is fabulous. Fabulous.
Oh, it's in the cover letter.
It says each term of service elected or appointed official of each agency
Mhm.
should take a public agency
Yeah.
financial. Where has this been? I
Well,
mean,
the answer, the problem is that we talked about this, the finance.
Where do
Given
they,
them.
where do they?
Well, you can get them, I'm pretty sure through, like it says, but I'm wondering if we should make it a little stronger and say, a new board, we have an orientation booklet or something we do with new elected board members, right?
Correct.
So maybe we should add that this will be part of their orientation to offer this at that
Well-
time. Because, I mean, I'm not a financial person, and it's been hard at times for people that don't have financial stuff.
If I might
So
just-
I mean, when you're thinking about the public's money and its millions, I know it says further analysis, but can we make it a little stronger? Like, it will happen within, I don't know, once a year, something, or upon implementation, I'm just a little worried.
I'm fine with that. I think the board members would be well served to do that.
I mean, I didn't even know they had this.
Well, we're not
I'm not
sure
sure
they
they do. No, that's the whole thing. We're not sure they
No,
do.
it's CASA, they usually have something, but there might be some webinar stuff, I don't know.
Well, that's why it said further negotiation, because that's actually what
Yeah.
that's what Greg mentioned at the financial committee meeting. He's like, I don't know of it. And Felicia, didn't you say you weren't sure or you didn't know?
I wasn't able to locate anything in the brief time that I had.
So I think you could change the wording a little bit like, we don't know where it's done, but we're all for it. That makes sense.
Director Borski is raising his hand.
Just real quick, a couple years ago, I went to the CSDA, California Special District, and they do indeed have legal classes for board members, they have financial sessions for board members, and there's, I said at the time that I went that I learned a tremendous amount of the legal and also the financial aspects, and you can pick and choose. And this one, Mary, isn't it coming up in August?
Maybe you could be a pension expert.
Yeah, well, I think the columns and numbers.
You know, I think we want to beef up R3 with Doug's comments and say, it has to be 74 and 75 were approved but haven't been implemented yet, but here's what we're doing. And put in what Doug said.
Which is what?
Here's what we did.
Oh, pay down.
Yep.
It hasn't even been implemented yet, but here's what we've already done.
Well, I think, just for your consideration, one of the challenges with this recommendation is we're not entirely sure what it means.
Okay.
The wording is, so when they say that your OPEB plan assets will be sufficient to make all projected OPEB benefit payments, that, and then we kind of feel like that's actually one of those it's a bit too vague. The terminology in this whole topic is so important. And I think if you handed that, let's take this actuarial we're talking about, if you handed him or her that statement and said, tell me the answer, they would probably turn to Felicia with a number of questions to say, now let's talk, okay, what is it you actually want us to do? So that's the reason, or one of the reasons we just left it as requires further analysis. We're not sure exactly what the complete answer would be if you were saying, yes, we'll do that, or we're trying to do it. So,
okay, but I think we should say, nobody knows exactly the details of what it means yet, but here's what we did.
Yeah.
So just again, restate some of the action items that the agency has
Well, actually, it's
taken.
in the
action
cover
that we've taken. Okay,
So
yeah.
that's pretty good.
I might make a
Put it in.
suggestion. Yeah, I mean, it could possibly go into R2,
Okay.
recommendation 2. We could talk about that
Sure.
more fully in that section, if that's the direction of the board.
Sure.
Yep.
It's weak. I just had a couple raises.
The whole thing.
Any other comments on this? So we'll revise the cover letter to be a little stronger, and I can also help with that if you want us.
You feel like you have enough specificity?
Yes, I
Okay.
do. So I can
With those changes?
reiterate the direction of the board
Sure.
is to edit the letter so that it's clear about the contributions that the district has made and the comparisons that the grand jury report makes versus what the actuarial report actually states, so that the letter ultimately is stronger of a representation of the district's commitment to paying down its unfunded liability. So we'll make those edits, and then the edits that will be made to the response, the formal response to the grand jury report will be to recommendation number 2, to again reiterate what the district has done in terms of contributions and what the proposed contributions will be. Again, with a commitment to, well, I'm just going to say with a commitment to being consistent with our existing policy for contributions. And that is the only change that I understand the board.
The cover letter.
That, yes, but the only response, the only change to the
Yeah.
response is in that one item. Okay, very good. And I
And
think
maybe
I have
we're
that.
going to bring it back to the consent calendar next time or something.
Do we need to, or it needs to be
No, it needs to
submitted?
actually be submitted.
Yeah.
We've got a deadline.
This was
Make
the
the
second.
changes.
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay, maybe-
Okay.
I thought it said there's a
I think that's fine.
We could, we haven't,
Oh,
we do actually.
Oh, we do? Okay,
Yeah,
I thought
August
we were-
14th.
Yeah, so the recommendation is to bring it back. to the-
Oh, okay, great, we have enough
So
time
we
to
do
bring it
that?
back?
Okay.
Okay. So bring it back on consent.
Very good.
All right, thank
Thank
you,
you.
that, we didn't need to take any action on that formally, right? Okay. Item number 10, consideration of approving the district response to the draft lab code, MSR.
So
Craig?
I'll do a quick intro on this. Yeah, so this is the topic the board has, we've been tracking for, gosh, I think probably close to a year and a half now, but, so the draft 2017 Marin LAFCO Central Marin Wastewater Municipal Services Review, or the MSR, was issued back in April. The district, along with each of the other agencies that are part of that study, has been asked by LAFCO to review and provide any comments back for their consideration. The board set up a process at the May meeting as to how you wanted to conduct that review and craft a draft letter, and that's the process that was followed. Individual board review comments were funneled to the general manager. We reviewed those, drafted a letter in coordination with the board president to reflect all the feedback on the key issues from the board members, and then also to formulate a proposed set of responses to the recommendations based on the feedback from the individual board members. And so the resulting draft letter is what you have attached to the staff report. I think it's a fairly thorough and is intended to be constructive, and I think it is. Hopefully the board feels the same in terms of the feedback to LAFCO. I mean, they obviously, we feel they've missed the mark on a few things, but it's also very important and I think constructive process that they're working to engage the agencies in. And so I think the draft response, is provided in that spirit to them. But the main question for the board this evening, really, action item wise, is if you agree with the content of the draft letter, then it would be finalized and go out under board president Solo's signature to LAFCO. And this does have a deadline of June 30th to receive those comments back. And that's, I'll hand it back to the board.
Okay. I've seen this probably more than anybody on the board, so any comments?
Yeah.
Tom?
Okay, first of all, I really like the tone of it. I think it's a really good letter, but it's a little nits. The agencies should, the last line on the first page, they keep calling us county sanitary districts, not sewer. So change it to sanitary. They call us county sanitary districts. The bottom line of the first page of the draft.
And is that inaccurate as well?
Yeah.
They call us county sanitary.
No, but that's what it's saying. These agencies should not be referred to as county sewer districts.
Yeah, we were
They keep calling us county sanitary districts.
Which is,
The LAFCO report calls us county sanitary districts.
Right.
So change sewer to sanitary.
is that inaccurate then? Should we have that sentence at all?
They should not be, okay. They're not calling us county sewer districts, they're calling us county sanitary districts. They should be calling us sanitary districts.
Oh, without county?
Yeah, we're not a county sanitary district.
Yeah, I think that was the intent of that,
Okay, but LAFCO keeps calling us a county sanitary district.
Or a regional, or
And we want to be called a sanitary district.
okay.
Okay, but it says county sewer district.
Oh, okay.
Some of
The
us
sentence he's saying the sentence is incorrect because the sentence says agencies should not be referred to as county sewer districts.
And it should
It
say,
should say the agency should not be referred to as county sanitary.
Oh,
districts.
Correct.
but sanitary districts, when I
word
just put in the
sewer
comma,
should be
but
sanitary.
sanitary.
And I would like to say, so,
Yeah.
so refer to us as sanitary districts.
Gotcha.
Okay, and then on page 3 at the top, wastewater demands de-intensified. Now, wastewater flows are de-intensified. I'm wondering if the strength goes up, and I put a call into Jason to put it.
He's in
I
Hawaii.
missed it. Is our strength going up? Is wastewater strength going up, do you think?
I don't know.
If the flow goes down, but the,
Well, generally, I mean, you might see some
okay.
correlation there
So-
in terms of
So I don't know about that one, but anyway, the next one, number 8. Wastewater demands intensifying, and I'd like you to recommends changing the word intensifying to increasing.
I thought the same thing.
Also, RVSD agrees with the statement. I don't agree with that statement. I don't think it's really increasing. I think we had a huge storm, and it was up, but I think it's staying about the same.
Yeah.
You mean year over year?
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, I mean, it depends on the weather. It isn't really increasing, it just depends on the weather.
okay. I understand.
So I don't agree with them that it's increasing. I disagree.
You would agree
I think
that
it's
it
staying the same.
increases on peak days, because that's the definition of a peak day.
Well, I think the way we interpreted this was kind of at a macro level, taking the last 10 years of whatever winter seasons overall, has CMSA, as ultimately at the end of as the receiver of all the flows in those big wet weather events, what's been the trend overall with the peak wet weather flows. And I think, but I'm not 100% sure on this, I thought the peak wet weather flows over time have been incrementally higher. Like this year, they had the highest ever recorded into the plant.
Is it because we can send more to them now? Because
There's a lot of variables. Yeah, there's a lot of variables. Anyway, I don't know, and also another point of the draft response, just for intent, was we felt that, and there's a note in here about it, that using any period of, say, 5 or 7 years or 10 years, it doesn't really help, because you're basically trying to predict wet weather flows in the future, and it's hard to predict the weather, is the problem. So, I mean, if the board wants to,
here's what I'd like to
it would be
I would cross out agrees with this statement, comma, but increasing the maximum RVSD cautions against developing. Use that increase, agrees.
Okay.
That's what I'd like to do.
And would you like to do that on number 7 as well? I mean, those are parallel, aren't they parallels? Whatever they are,
Agrees
recommendations?
with well, no, I think that's right. So down there on number 11, I'd like to add a line that says, okay, near-term finances are in good shape and highlighted by liquidity income, blah, blah. RVSD also believes that long-term finances are also in good shape.
Yeah.
How can we say that?
RVSD also.
Because we're within our 5-year plan
finances
and
are in good shape.
Well, I think we need to put some explanation.
Well, we can vote on it.
Well, I think I'd caution, because
Yeah,
part of what
against
they're saying is,
themselves
you're using
Okay,
data
but I
that's
just
3 years
wanted to
old.
say
It's just,
You got to
I
say
don't
it.
care.
yeah.
Okay, and then the other one, that's number 2 CMSA, that one really bugs me.
Which one do you want?
I have,
Number
here's another
CMSA
one,
at the
it's
top of
on
page
it's
4.
on the top of page 4. Would LAVCO recommend that MMWD allocate water supply among planning agencies, sir? No, we don't have to put that in. That's about the logic of it. Would they even consider the water district allocating capacity?
Right.
See what I mean?
Yeah.
Anyway, we're not going to put that in there. Those are my comments.
Other board members, any comments?
Other than that, I thought it was
Well, I just want to point out, I did send Greg an email the other day saying, I also agree with what Tom said at the beginning. I like the tone, I like the letter, I thought it was well done.
Yeah, I feel like it was a challenge because the report had so many issues. I mean, even it's just discussion of that last item, the intensifying. It's hard to know what they were really trying to get at, and so it's hard to react in a way that isn't like apoplectic. All right, so we'll make that change
Just some minor
to
change.
number 8, and then the change. We'll look at it to be sure that they said. So that our issue is the county, that we don't want to be labeled as a county
Well, we're
sanitary
not a
district.
county sanitary district.
Well, I think they're using it imprecisely as we're in the county.
No, it's
We're multi-city.
A county sanitation district is a real standard wastewater term. Sangerfeld Sanitation District is a county sanitation district. And it used to be called Sangerfeld County Sanitation Districts. A lot of them lifted the county name out of there, but they're under the County Sanitation District Act.
Oh,
We're
so
under the
different act.
Sanitary District Act.
I did not
We're
know that.
never called a county sanitary district. I've never heard it before.
Okay,
And I
so it's a
know
term of art, I
all
didn't
over the
understand
time.
that. Okay.
And I'd like to say, call us a sanitary district. Call us Ross Valley Sanitary District.
Oh, I love your vigor on that point. All right, does anyone in the public have any comment on the LAFCO? All right, then,
I move to.
no, great, thank you.
I would move to approve the district response to the draft 2017 Marin LAFCO Central Marin Wastewater Municipal Service Review.
As amended.
As amended, thank you.
Sure, Kelly Borstein, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Item number 11, consideration of awarding and authorizing general manager to execute construction contract for PS 12 and PS 13, not public school, pump station 12 and 13, not to exceed $6,998,000. Great, oh, Catherine.
Yeah, well, Catherine, you want to, well, tell you, I'll do it, and Catherine, I don't know if is
Yeah.
you can answer.
Greg
questions.
and or Catherine.
Yeah, this is a project that, well, it's significant in a couple of ways. Number one, I think to our earlier point about the pending amount of construction activity. This is taking pump station 12 and 13, which we've been moving along for almost 2 years now, actually. As it turns out, it's been a little bit longer than we expected, but it turned out to be a fairly complicated project. And so this is, just for context, when we did the 2013 asset management plan, as far as pump station work, the overhaul of pump station 12 and 13 was clearly identified as the highest priority pump station projects for the agency. So that's why they were started on first. We bundled them into one project for design and construction for efficiencies, and given the similar nature of the projects and that they're essentially kitty corner to each other on the Bon Air Shopping Center complex. So basically what you have before you this evening is this project has finally gone out for construction bidding. There's a recommendation from staff for a bid award. We think that under the circumstances we got generally favorable bidding conditions. We thought it was fairly competitive, and as you can see from the results, we're pretty close within range of the engineer's estimate based on the final 100% design. So basically the action before the board is to award that construction contract. It will certainly be a significant part of the new fiscal year's capital program. And on a quick side note, I think so far the work on all of this in terms of relationships with the Bon Air Shopping Center folks has been very good. So we hope to keep it that way during construction. So with that, I'll hand it back to the board with any questions, and Catherine Hayden can address those.
Board members, any questions?
What is the time frame for because they're taking those pump stations down, so they're not going to be down in February, are they?
So we're gonna start with 12, and then it's an 18-month total window, and the very first thing they're gonna do is put in the bypass pumping capability. So pump station 12 can be completely bypassed, likely would be during wet weather, and 13 would not be immediately, but there would be times during where we would have the ability to bypass that entirely during wet weather.
We bypass 12 and 13 at the same time, but not during peak weather flows in winter. Is that what I'm understanding?
The construction is going to be 12 first and then 13. So we're going to do the smaller pump station, which is easier to bypass. They're going to start that.
Okay.
So and that has a higher likelihood of being down for an extended period in the winter because it's a much simpler operation to bypass.
And how long do you anticipate 12 taking, and how long do you anticipate 13 taking?
I think the total windows were 6 and 18, so they're overlapping. So 6 months for getting both of them started, and then 18 months total before 13 is finished. 12 would be over the first 6+ months.
Do you anticipate any flow issues with having 12? 12 is going to be routed around? The whole time? 18
Likely
months?
a good, no, for 6 months,
Okay, so-
about 6 months.
Okay. And when do you anticipate that starting?
The work would start, so it's gonna go out July, say we contracting in August. It's really until you have everything on site, 3 to 4 months before they can start the work. So initially what they would do, there would be some temporary shutdown to put in the ability to bypass. So they're gonna put in a pit that they would pump out, put in the bypass pumping inlets. So that's the first order of work that they would do there. And then, before they go in and start, taking out the components of the pump station, it would be longer in the winter. It really depends on when the materials come on site. We're constraining them that they can't start the work until they have everything. So it basically is a really long submittal process for this, and then a long ordering process. It can be 8 to 12 weeks for some of these components, once we've finalized what's going to be built for us. 12 weeks or potentially longer.
I think partly too, as far as the expectation, if let's assume they lined up to be working heavily in the winter, would we be allowing them to function in like wet weather conditions with bypass pumping?
It could be, for 12 it is possible to do a complete bypass. We put constraints in there, but for 13, definitely.
They are not allowed to have 13.
Constraints for 13 because it's a much bigger flow.
Right. So there's timing restrictions on wet weather construction for 13, just because of the practical limitations and the reliability.
So 13 cannot be taken down during wet weather flow.
I mean,
at
that's
all.
a big
12 smaller. Which one did we visit?
13.
13.
Okay.
13.
All right.
They would be required to have the capacity on site to bypass during wet weather, also at 13. I mean, the work, anytime during the shutdown, we can't say there's not going to be a storm in September.
Yeah.
So they'll put in the infrastructure that they could completely bypass the station. We'll have the redundancy. It's a lot simpler at 12 because the flows are so low. You're talking about a small trailer mounted pump.
For 12.
Mm-hmm.
No bypass at 13 happening.
There will be bypass at 13. There's constraints for wet weather bypass at 13.
Okay, understood. Okay. All right.
What is the useful life once this is done for these two? And they're pretty much brand new. What are we looking at for a useful life?
The pump stations typically go on like a 15 and a 30-year cycle. So you do, some improvements every 15 years. So this complete overhaul, you would do another complete overhaul for on the order of 30 years, but we would be looking again at some key components.
And we have all the latest electronics in this, so we're not scavenging off of eBay.
We're not.
Are we going to have to hire construction management for this?
We have contracted already. Cavello is on board with construction management.
We did that.
And they helped us also with the constructability review, and we incorporated some of their comments in terms of the final set of bid.
And what about engineering design during construction of the?
Waterworks Engineers is still under contract for the engineering services during construction.
All right, anything else? It was the lowest responsible bid, so that's good.
Is there a tech guide? Are we dealing with any tech guide?
Not on this. There is in the vicinity an old bypass force main that's technical, but it's not active and wouldn't be activated in any way during this project. So, no.
All right, any other comments on this item? Entertain a motion?
I motion that the district accept the apparent low bidder's bid and award the contract to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, Anderson Pacific Engineering Construction, Inc., in the amount not to exceed $6,998,000.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I'm sorry.
Oh, was there a second? I'm sorry, there was not.
All second.
Okay, we're seeing Daphne. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Okay, item number 12. Consideration of approving and authorizing general manager to execute a consulting services agreement with Waterworks in an amount not to exceed $347,011 for pump station 15. Greg and
Yeah,
Calvin?
we'll repeat
This
this.
is not a
With a slightly different project. No, okay, so pump station 15 is the largest pump station in the system. I think the board's all familiar with that. And again, taking this back to the context of the asset management plan, this pump station did receive I'll say kind of a cursory overview during the asset management plan work. It didn't get a super in-depth review, just that was the nature of that work at that time. It did identify a few really high priority upgrades, which have already been taken care of, and the main example would be the board may recall some of this. We basically completely moved and reconfigured the PG&E service drop and took care of an old transformer problem, and those were some, we think, significant sources of unreliability, so to speak, with this pump station. What that left was a lot of sort of to be determined needs at pump station 15. For example, one of the apparent ones was just the basic age and, well, primarily the age of the variable frequency drives for the pumps. Now, these are the mechanisms that allow the pumps to operate at a range of speed so that they can match flows coming into the system. They're really essentially standard feature on most pump stations these days, but the units that are in pump station 15 are 15 plus years old, and at the time, even then, they weren't really the latest and greatest when they were put in. So they're really the weak link in pump station 15 at this point in terms of reliability. But there's also a host of other electrical and what we call INC, which is implementation and control, needs for the whole facility. So this project is basically coming in and doing a much more in-depth assessment of all the electrical and INC needs, and then putting together the engineering design package to go out and get that work done. So it's not so much, it's not the really complete A to Z overhaul that pump station 12 and 13 are getting. This is a more selective upgrade of really all the critical electrical and INC components in the station. The staff went through our standard request for proposals. We got 3. We had a review team and so forth in the standard fashion. Waterworks was the highest ranked. We then negotiated the contract with them. And I think with that, I'll hand it back to the board and we can answer any questions.
Board members, any questions? I have some.
What's the budget on the repair?
On the expected work?
Yeah.
Do you want to address that?
2 million.
$2 million.
It's between 1.3 and 2 million. The really important first step in this is to basically for them to go in and do the evaluation, what exactly needs to get done. Because the IAMP has kind of a range of things. You might do this at the same time that you're doing that. So the very first step of this project is to really clearly, narrowly define what the scope is. So the budget is between 1.3 and 2 million for the construction. And the really definite elements that will be done in here are some of the variable frequency drives, the electrical instrumentation improvements, but narrowing down the scope will be the first order of work. So 1.7 to 2 million is the range here.
1.7 to 2.
Sorry.
So it's
So it's about 17%.
Yes, at the higher cost.
So I can't help but look over the bid rating rankings and all and channel, former board member. So, and I see, where Waterworks pulls ahead is in the understanding of an ability to meet schedule. And I also remember the history with Newt Engineering, and so I have a little sensitivity to, and so explain to me the difference of 12 points and how that, do they really just get what needs to be done, and they're also by far, they're 30% higher costs even after negotiation. But not that big a difference in point spread about what, how they were ranked higher. Is that part of it? They get that what needs to be done is much more expensive.
Yeah, what were the, Catherine, you want to?
It is the approach, the firm and team qualifications. I think they had a deep team. They did have, slightly higher. I think all of these firms that proposed have a lot of understanding of the district facilities work at this pump station specifically. So we had a lot kind of parity between people in terms of that. Project schedule, I'd have to check what the reviewer comments were. So I don't know exactly what elements they were, but the team, firm and team, to me, when I'm looking at this, is an important thing. And we do select, strictly based on the score. So we look at the ranking first and select based on that, and then we negotiate with the firm to get a better price.
And that's the legally proper process, right? You score, even if it's a 1 point?
Well, there's not like one legally proper process. We're in the world here of not in public bidding because this is not a public works construction project. We're in the world of professional services, and the district has a history of this qualification-based process selection. So it's consistent with that. So I would say, yes, it's legally supported, but more importantly, it's consistent with the district practices.
But more importantly,
It's consistent with how the district's process is done.
So they negotiated their price down 150,000. What got negotiated out?
Staff, which staff are working on things, how much effort we're on different phases. So the deliverables and just really fine-tuning the understanding. They talked a lot in terms of which staff will be working.
How would Newt have done it for so much less? I see 230,000 versus
Right.
they're half of the initial. What would they have been negotiated at higher probably to make sure they were?
There are cases where we do negotiate just in terms we want this scope to be included, and that wasn't clearly accounted for. Often with these, it's the total number of hours. Sometimes it's a lower staff cost, so it could be the same number of hours, but a lower staff cost.
Has Waterworks been, were they at that pump station for the stuff that was done previously? Or
they've done work on 15 recently, yeah, they, and as has Newt, actually, I think the diminutators were done by Newt, and some of the recent electrical were, in fact, at the PG&E service drop and some of the related on-site engineering work, that was done by Waterworks. So 2 of these have actually had some recent experience with 15. One other, just for context, when we're doing these professional services, RFPs of this nature, and particularly with pump station 15, the reason I think you see such a big spread is don't think of these to have the precision of like a construction quote.
Right.
We put out an RFP that is somewhat vague, not because we want it to be, but because we haven't actually figured out the exact scope of the
They're going to tell us what we need to do.
Right. So and I've been on other sides of this discussion as a consultant, and you say, okay, here's what the RP says, you go huddle in your room with your team and you go, how do you interpret this? And you put together staff hours and so forth to be responsive. And so these aren't like rigid bids. Like they are going to commit to do, you're going to get exactly 100% design for SPC. I mean, and as Catherine pointed out, particularly in this case, the first task order in this project is to conduct a much more thorough on-site, technical review and define more clearly what are the specific upgrade needs for the facility. Then that determines the design. So I think in this case, you had one team who sort of said, well, they might need all of this, right? You're trying to read between the lines of what the RFP is offering. So that just, I think the main point of that is, don't look at the dollar symbols or the dollar numbers as that's like an exact comparison between them. It gives you a sense that, okay, the teams, why did they interpret it differently? And I know that question was asked to the Waterworks team. Do you want to highlight any of that, Catherine?
I don't have specifics on that.
Okay.
I didn't.
Okay, anyway, that's just some things to keep in mind. When we get done with the first task, which is again, the much more updated in-depth needs assessment. We can refine the actual engineering services and the costs at that point. So use the dollar figures as a guide. I think in this case, it's not like a low bid situation where you say, this is exactly what you're going to get for $229,000.
Right.
One of the key things we worked with them on was, the submittals and what the review periods were, and how many meetings they had with us. So I think they had sort of foreseen a lot of interaction with the district. And we said, let's streamline this.
Take it down.
We don't want you here 12 times in 6 months.
Board members, any other questions on this?
So we're paying 100,000 over. The other two bids, it's 100,000 over.
Yes? That's qualified.
There's no, so we have no chance of being sued because of this, right? From the other,
It's a service agreement.
right?
Well, we always have a chance of winning. They would have very little chance of winning, or no chance of winning. This is clearly in professional services and not in a public.
So we don't have to really define findings. I mean, what I'm hearing is really, I get some of what you're saying, but it's not, it's kind of fuzzy. So we don't have to say exactly why we did X, Y, and Z, right?
Well, I think that
There's a record on it.
yeah, it appears, that we went and got proposals, we went through them, we scored the qualifications in various areas and put in time and energy into figuring out which one was the right one for the job. So we have a strong record of that.
And if we're going to choose not the low bidder, I'd rather do it on the hundreds of thousands rather than the millions. All right, if nothing more, I'll ask for a motion.
I will move to approve and authorize the general manager, upon review and approval of council, to execute a consultant service agreement with Waterworks Engineers LLC in the amount not to exceed $347,011 for engineering design and engineering services during construction for PS 15 Kent Field Pump Station Improvements Project.
Thank you. Do you have a second?
Second.
Ellie Borstein, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh,
And votes no. All right, thank you. Item number 13.
These people waited the whole meeting.
They just love good governance. Consideration of adopting resolution 17-1528, adopting a mitigated negative declaration for and approving the Larkspur Landing remediation project. Greg.
Okay, just a brief introduction on this item. This is the next step in the general process the district's been chipping away at to complete the updated site assessment, prepare a remediation work plan, and have that remediation work plan properly permitted and go through CEQA review. And in this case specifically, what the district has done is we looked at the scope of activities that are involved in the remediation of the Larkspur Landing site. And it's important to keep that in mind because that is in general terms, that is the definition of the project that CEQA is evaluating. And primarily that involves a fair amount of excavation, off-haul of materials from the site, importing of clean materials to the site, and so forth. So those are the kinds of activities. This is a transient construction type situation that occurs over a number of months and then is done. So that's sort of the context for the CEQA environmental review. The level of review was deemed to be appropriately as what's termed a mitigated negative declaration. That document, draft document, has been circulated for public review. We've received feedback from 3 different public agencies. Those have all been, those comments have been addressed. And the document is ready for final approval by the board, and that, if done, that will complete the CEQA and approval process for the project. With that, I'm going to hand it back to the board and just add, we have Bridget DeShields from Integral and Todd Miller from Kennedy Jenks. And the CEQA services on this project were delivered in the sense of, or having Integral as a subcontractor to Kennedy Jenks. So that's the team that's completed the CEQA work. And then Andrea also obviously can speak to this as well. But with that, I'll hand it back to the board and answer any questions. Board members?
3 public agencies, what were they?
Bridget?
Caltrans, the City of Lawrenceburg, and the Federated Indians of Great Manchuria.
Okay. And are we working with the Federated, I'm sorry, the
Federated Indians of Great
okay.
Manchuria.
And are they going to be on site during the construction? Is that, I think I read that during the original.
Most likely they will be on site. One of the mitigation measures, and we've been working very interactively with the tribe under AB 52, which requires us to do consultation with them. So we've been interacting with them quite a bit. One of the mitigation measures is to develop a treatment plan, which is basically like a memorandum of understanding with them. And I anticipate that will involve them being on site at some point during the excavation activities.
Right. And Lawrenceburg, what was their question, concern?
So the city of Lawrenceburg will be involved with permitting the project in terms of a grading permit, both preliminary and an administrative process. So they had a number of comments and questions that were related to their subsequent approval of the grading permit. They want to be able to rely upon our secret document, not have to do their own secret document, which we want also. So all of this to everyone's benefit for us to work through some of those questions and comments from them. We had a meeting with them prior to releasing the initial study mitigated neg deck for public review, and then we had a meeting with them after to address their comments. And we also gave them a redlined version of the document to get feedback.
And Caltrans?
And Caltrans had just a few pretty minor comments and had a conversation with them over the phone and responded to those comments satisfactorily.
Okay.
Anybody else? I mean, I just noticed that all the boxes were checked, no impact or less than significant impact. That was my in-depth analysis of this, knowing nothing about this at all. So I'll defer to the experts. So what do you need from us? Do we need to adopt the resolution?
We do.
I have a question on the verbiage on it. Maybe it's me because I'm tired, but let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whereas down on attachment A. Based on the initial study, it should be the district, I think, but determined that there is no substantial evidence in light of the whole record before the agency that the project as mitigated may have a significant effect. Am I reading that wrong?
Mm-hmm. On the environment.
That's correct. That's
So it's not gonna make it any worse.
That's a finding that the district has to make in order to approve a mitigated negative declaration. And the word mitigated means that for each potentially significant impact that was identified, we've identified mitigation that will bring it to less than significant.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Should we put the word "the district" in front, or
Which word?
district?
We've actually been consistent not using the throughout the resolution.
Okay.
All right, any other comments? Thank you. Thank you for sitting for our entire meeting.
Yes.
Often we rearrange the agenda to get people home earlier, but we
That was my oversight.
neglected to do that tonight. All right, then I'll ask for a,
I move we adopt resolution 17-1528, adopting the mitigated negative declaration for and approving the Larkspur remediation project.
I second that.
Daphne Borstein. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, unanimous. Thank you. Thank you. Verbal report by board members and staff and request for future agenda items.
Yes,
Yes.
I would like to find out if we could move the August meeting to the fourth Wednesday.
Okay.
Why? Why?
Is
I
that,
can't make the third Wednesday.
August,
I'm good.
I think,
You get that, then
I think, not that we all need to be here.
What would it be?
Not in May.
August?
I might be out of town that.
I haven't even made my
Staff.
Yeah.
What is the date for it?
August
Call
30th.
in, Tom? Can you call in? Tom, you can call in? Call in?
I can't.
What is it the third or is it the,
It's
is it the
third,
second to
yeah.
last or the
It's
third?
normally the
Third.
third
Okay.
Wednesday.
So we would typically be on the 16th? All right, I'll be out of town the 23rd, not that, you can't have a meeting without.
Yeah,
One board member.
I may have a conflict actually moving it.
No.
So can we compare notes with the
Sure.
board and follow up on the
Doodle poll?
change and communicate? Yeah, and because I think we have to look at a number
Okay.
of schedule challenges.
So you're not available the 16th, that's correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you available anytime that week? Just curious, because sometimes we've moved it by one day
I
and.
think I'm going the 14th.
Okay.
What about the second week?
That puts pressure on the.
Do we have to make an agenda item?
Well, can we,
This is just something between Mary and Greg, so you guys can
Oh, okay.
communicate with Greg about your schedules.
Okay.
and we'll,
I'm sorry.
but the goal is at least potentially consider trying to accommodate some of the schedules on the August meeting.
Yeah.
And we can communicate. Okay.
All right, thank you. Anything else? Any other reports or requests for agenda items?
No, does it require an agenda item if we want to begin to possibly look at moving operations?
You asked for that last month. I was just remembering that.
Yes, I did, but we didn't do anything yet.
I know, we didn't get on this month's agenda, but I presume staff is
Agendize a discussion of it.
Example?
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
moving our
Yeah.
administrative operations to CMSA property,
Oh,
seeking to rent from them rather than having our own separate building, which then would be another asset that would provide some cash inflow. Right? We own that we own the printer building, correct?
Yes.
No, it's just the operating.
Oh, you don't mean that
Field staff.
administrative. Oh, I'm
It's
sorry,
not-
I spoke out of turn. No, it's not the administrative, it's the courtyard sort of.
Yeah.
Is that?
And on top of that, we have a warehouse, that then there would be room that we're paying monthly rent on Anderson, that we could move over there.
So we'll bring this back for agendized discussion.
Okay, thank you. All right, anything else?
I wanted to note that the monthly legal services did go up. That was due to that one Ranger thing, but if you take out the cost of Ranger, I drew my own little drawing. It's actually going down. So if you took that out, it's going in the right direction, and,
Now you just start.
Doug, your idea about attending the Senate.
should we put that on the agenda?
Do we need an agenda?
Do we need an agenda item on that?
What is it?
Or maybe it's just be the
Public outreach.
Public outreach committee.
Well, Doug had spoken with Mary before this meeting,
And Greg.
and Greg, and discussed the possibility, and maybe we'll bring that back next month.
Of what?
Of us having a similar setup that we had today at the September 24th San Selmo Country Fair Day. Mike said right away he'd be happy to hang out in the booth with me because I said I would do it. Tom then said he would, so my feeling is everybody could, maybe we could.
No, we need to have a notice meeting.
No,
I will stay away.
Well, actually, do we have to have a notice meeting if we're doing a public outreach like that?
Yeah,
Is gathering in a place to discuss district.
we'll have shifts, It makes
Well,
sense.
there's-
I'm sorry, couldn't we just make it a
Two
public notice
at a
meeting that we're gonna
time.
have a meeting
Sure.
at Country Fair Day and people can come as they want?
So we'll,
Or if he wants to be there, yes.
we're gonna work with that prior suggestion as well. So we've got time to prepare for
Okay,
it.
okay, thanks.
All right, thank you, everyone. We're adjourned.
Thank you.